Thank you for joining me today for episode 7 of Soapbox Daily. Today, we're discussing why do we need a government? Especially these days with everything that's going on in the world. This is the big question on some people's minds. Why do we need a government? Well, let's start off our day with, as always, hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on, of course, when and where you're listening from. And also, how is your integrity today? Speaking of integrity is important in a lot of different areas, including government, when it comes to the way things are ran. Because in a diplomatic society, a government needs to be transparent, needs to have some sort of honor, some sort of code, some sort of keeping things above board. And, because they're voted in by the people, for the people. I'm not trying to quote the U.S. government or any sort of paperwork and everything else. But no, it's a voted in type situation. Otherwise you're looking at tyrannical or a dictatorship type, not really a government, but kind of a regime or whatever the case you want to be, where somebody has rose to the seat of power, not by election, not by because the people want it, but because they managed to maneuver themselves into that position. And generally in those situations, they tend to exploit the people, not really serve the people, and use it as, their own labor force for their own personal gains. Namely, look at people like Putin, who has a $400 million yacht, which I'm pretty sure he didn't earn with his paycheck, but more so, because of the labor of his people. So much for a communism type society. Communism, by its true definition, means, of course, for the community. Everybody helps to help each other. But hey, that's another show and another topic for another time. So let's get into, of course, why do we need a government? And before I get into that, other than, inquiring about your integrity, please check out getoffmysoapbox.com. Our long format show is going to be airing August 3rd of next week. Please check that out, getoffmysoapbox.com. Okay, so on with today's topic. Why do we need a government? Well, let's see. Governments are necessary to maintain law and order. It plays a vital role in the development of a nation. The government is responsible for providing the inhabitants of a nation with public amenities and basic facilities of health and education. Yes, I read up a definition of it because I was kind of curious of what a government's supposed to be. And that's pretty much summing it up. Maintaining law and order is important because otherwise we have a world of chaos and anarchy and gangs and violence and no structure, no security, no safety. Because laws are essential for a society to function. Without laws, how can the government provide safety and security for its people? It just can't. Laws are there in order to keep a civil environment, and the government's there to make sure that that's there. But also, of course, the government is responsible for providing infrastructure, buildings and maintaining roads and running hospitals and schools. Honestly, it's not an easy job. And, usually who gets targeted when the government doesn't do what portion of a country or whatever doesn't like, it's usually the prime minister or president or whatever, the top of the pyramid is, usually gets the blame. But in reality, believe it or not, in the governing body, that's just a figurehead. It's underneath them that actually is at the ground level of that structure who actually has the power. Presidents really don't have power unless they're not truly a democracy and not truly a governing force, but more of a dictatorship. Pretty much, you got to look where the power lies. For instance, in the States, I think governors have more power than actual presidents do because they're at the state level and their pull actually does more, but people don't realize it. So the reason we bring up this topic for today's show is there's a lot of civil unrest in the last couple of years, especially during the whole COVID times. Capitol Hill got attacked on January 6th. We have protests in Canada. This is just stupid chaos. The question I have for these people that attack the government like this for the reason that they don't like what the government's doing because, they're either left or the right, or they have their own views and they don't agree with the governing body that's currently controlling stuff. Do you think you can do a better job? I don't think you could do a better job. It's not easy running a country and running a country right and running a country where people are happy, feel secure, are provided for, and prosperous. It's not easy. It's a lot more work than you think. You get in for 4 years and you try to make some positive changes. Guess what? Your term ends or you're limited on terms. By the time you get the ball rolling, the next party comes in, the next elected candidate comes in, and they undo everything you just did. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's very difficult to implement any sort of positive change because politicians have a tendency to go to where money is, and the way the wind blows. The evils of money we'll talk about on another show. Bottom line is, why do we need a government? We need a government for a lot of reasons, because otherwise, as I said, we'll have anarchy and chaos. Keep that in consideration of how much a government actually does. They do their level best. I'm not saying they're 100% pure, and I'm not saying their integrity is always right on, but it's a lot of work. We do need a government, because otherwise there'll be no law and order and there will be no safety and security. Appreciate what you have if you are in a democratic type society. With democracy, if you have a democracy, if you are fortunate enough to actually be in a country that actually has a democracy where you can actually vote and everything else and have the freedoms, savor it, because a lot of people are losing rights every single day in other parts of the world. All right, so I'm going to wrap that up for today. This show we're going to wrap up for today and call it a day. Please check out getoffmysoapbox.com for more details about this show and, of course, our long format show of Get Off My Soapbox. And I am your host, Matt Morgan. Have yourself a tremendous day moving forward, and I'll see you tomorrow.